Racist cop harasses black woman. Her family's influence turns the spotlight on him. In this gripping and eye-opening video, we delve into a disturbing encounter between a racist cop and a black woman, which quickly spirals into a larger societal issue. The video captures the tense moments when a routine traffic stop escalates into a blatant display of racial bias. Witness the unprofessional conduct of the officer as he unfairly targets the woman, leaving her feeling helpless and violated at the hands of those sworn to protect her. If you are enthusiastic about this narrative, please inform us. If you appreciated the video, press 1. If not, select 0. Your feedback genuinely motivates me to collect additional uplifting and significant narratives.
For most people, it was an ordinary afternoon. But for her, there was a dark cloud shadowing her steps. Her husband, Daniel, the dependable, kind-hearted captain of their local police precinct, had kissed her goodbye just hours before, unaware of the restlessness she felt. As she turned a corner, Maya's eyes met those of a police officer, a tall, broad-shouldered man leaning against his squad car. She felt a twinge of discomfort. Something about the way he looked at her sent an uneasy shiver down her spine. "Ma'am, can I have a word with you?" he called, straightening up. Maya forced a polite smile. "Of course, officer." The man, whose badge read Tyler Roberts, stepped closer than necessary, eyeing her with an intensity that felt neither professional nor appropriate. "Just a routine check. Nothing to worry about," he said, his eyes narrowing slightly as he looked her up and down. Maya cleared her throat. "Sure, is there something I can help you with?" Tyler smirked, folding his arms as he leaned in. "You seem nervous, ma'am. Do you have a reason to be?" "Nervous?" "No," she replied, keeping her voice calm. "Just not used to being stopped like this. That's all." His gaze darkened. "You people always say that." Maya's stomach twisted. She didn't need to ask what he meant. She took a slow breath, keeping her voice steady. "Is there a problem, Officer Roberts?" "Depends," he said, tilting his head with a mock grin. "We don't get many visitors like you around here." Maya tensed. "I live here, officer. With my husband." Tyler chuckled, shaking his head. "Oh, you're married, huh? What's his name?" She hesitated, regretting she'd even stopped to talk. But a glimmer of anger flickered in her, and she answered, "Captain Daniel Harper." Tyler's face twitched, his smirk faltering, but only for a second. Then he leaned in closer. "Oh, so you're Mrs. Harper, huh? Captain's wife. Well, lucky you." The tone of his voice was dripping with disdain. "But you see, Mrs. Harper, your husband doesn't mean much to me. Not when I'm the one standing here right now." The disrespect in his words left her momentarily speechless. She swallowed, steeling herself, keeping her head high. "That's quite an attitude for someone who's meant to serve the community," she replied softly. He barked a laugh, leaning back as if amused. "Oh, we serve the community, all right. Just not everyone in it." His eyes traced her face, lingering on her jawline, and then sliding down with an obvious gaze. "It's funny, though. A woman like you in a place like this must have taken some convincing to get in here." "Excuse me?" Maya replied, her voice sharp, as a surge of humiliation washed over her. Her cheeks burned as she fought to keep control. "I don't think my choices are any of your concern, officer." "Oh, but I am concerned," he replied with a smirk, stepping closer, so close she could feel his breath. "Captain Harper or not, I can make things very complicated for you. You sure you want to keep up this attitude?" In that instant, Maya realized he was challenging her, seeing if she'd fold under his pressure. Her skin prickled with anger and fear. This wasn't just about an officer doing his job. It was personal. He was testing her boundaries, probing her for a reaction. She took a small step back, her voice low but firm. "I don't appreciate this kind of treatment, Officer Roberts. I'm not doing anything wrong, and I'd like to go now." Tyler smirked, stepping sideways to block her path. "I'm not done yet, Mrs. Harper. I don't remember saying you could go." The threat in his tone was clear. She took a shaky breath, her hands clenched, feeling the rage building up inside her. But she knew better than to react. Tyler's gaze didn't soften. It grew colder, as if her defiance had piqued his interest even more. "You know," he said, voice dropping as he leaned in again, "people like you should know when to keep their heads down, when to stay quiet. You understand?" Maya's jaw tightened, every nerve in her body screaming at her to hold back. She felt humiliated, trapped, cornered by a man who saw her as nothing more than someone to intimidate. Just then, a faint click drew her attention. A passerby had stopped at a distance, holding up their phone recording. Tyler noticed too, and his smile twisted into a snarl. But he couldn't ignore the camera, not now. He straightened, putting a fake smile back on as if the entire conversation had been professional. "All right, Mrs. Harper, you have a good day now." His tone dripped with sarcasm as he stepped aside, finally allowing her to pass. Maya's breath was shallow, and she fought back the tears threatening to spill over. Every step away from him felt heavy. The humiliation and anger coiled within her. She wanted nothing more than to tell Daniel. But as she walked, the memories of her past experience with police harassment rushed back, flooding her with fear and shame. When she reached her house, she closed the door behind her and leaned against it, breathing heavily. The anger she'd bottled up surged forward, twisting into a knot in her chest. She knew that facing Daniel would mean confronting memories she'd spent years burying. Daniel's voice came from the other room. "Maya, everything okay?" Maya hesitated, her mind racing with the decision of whether to share what happened or to keep it hidden once more. But the intensity of Tyler's words, the look in his eyes, the sheer humiliation of the encounter, it was too much to bear alone this time. Maya stood at the door, her heart pounding. She couldn't hide the shakiness in her hands, and the sting of Tyler's words clung to her like a dark cloud. But when she looked up, Daniel was already there, his expression shifting from relief to deep concern as he took in her face. "Maya," he said softly, reaching out for her hands. "What happened?" She glanced away, swallowing hard. "Just something happened while I was out." Daniel's brow furrowed, his gaze searching her face. "What do you mean something?" "Maya, you're shaking. Did someone hurt you?" Hearing his words, Maya felt her defenses crumble. She took a deep breath and nodded, gathering the courage to look him in the eyes. "It was a police officer. He stopped me during my walk. Said it was a routine check, but Daniel, it wasn't that. It was," she hesitated, feeling a weight in her throat. "He was trying to intimidate me. Said things no officer should say." Daniel's grip tightened on her hands. "Who was it? Do you know his name?" "Tyler Roberts," she whispered, her voice barely audible. The name seemed to linger in the air, filling the room with an unspoken tension. Daniel's face went pale, his jaw clenching. "Tyler, I know him. He's been on my radar, but there's never been enough to act on." His voice grew cold. "But I never imagined." She nodded, her voice filled with a pain she could barely hold back. "He knew who I was, Daniel. Knew I was your wife and didn't care. He acted like he owned the street, and I was just..." Her voice broke, and she looked away, shame creeping over her despite herself. Daniel's hand moved to her shoulder, his eyes dark with fury, but his voice calm. "Maya, none of this is your fault. Tyler crossed the line, and he's going to pay for it. I swear." He paused, looking at her with a gentleness that she knew hid his anger. "But there's something more here, isn't there?" She closed her eyes, taking a shaky breath. She hadn't planned to tell him about her past, but the fear and humiliation she'd buried for so long were now right there, demanding to be spoken. "Daniel, this wasn't the first time." Daniel looked at her, confusion turning to realization. "What do you mean?" Maya pulled her hands free, wrapping her arms around herself as if to shield from the memories. "Years before I met you, I had an encounter with an officer. It was different, but the way he looked at me, the way he acted, it was a nightmare I thought I'd buried. I never wanted to tell you. I didn't want you to carry that weight. But now, it's happening again, and I can't stay quiet." A silence hung between them, heavy and raw. Finally, Daniel spoke, his voice barely more than a whisper. "I can't believe you had to carry that alone." His eyes were fixed on her, filled with pain and anger, but this time the anger was directed inward, as if he'd failed her by not knowing. "I promised you safety, Maya, and I'm so sorry." "No, Daniel, you've given me everything," she said, reaching for his hand. "I just didn't know how to tell you. I thought it was safer if I just moved on, but..." Tyler's behavior brought it all back. Daniel's grip on her hand was firm, his voice laced with resolve. "This ends here, Maya. I'll make sure of it." She shook her head, fear creeping in. "Daniel, this isn't just about us. If you pursue this, it could jeopardize your position. Tyler's the kind of man who won't go down quietly. And what if there are others protecting him?" "That's exactly why I can't stay quiet," he replied, his tone resolute. "If there's a pattern here, and if Tyler's been allowed to get away with this, then he's not the only one at fault. Those who've ignored it are just as guilty." She felt a glimmer of relief mixed with apprehension. "But, Daniel, you'll be challenging people within your own precinct. Men you've known for years. Then they'll have to face the consequences," he replied sharply, as if each word burned. "I didn't take an oath to let men like Tyler abuse their power. And I won't stand by while my wife suffers because of it." Maya looked at him, sensing his unwavering resolve. She placed a hand on his cheek. "You're a good man, Daniel. But be careful. Tyler's dangerous. He won't go down without a fight." "I know," he said, his voice a low growl. "And I'm ready for it." The next day, Daniel made a call to his precinct, requesting an urgent meeting. He knew this wasn't going to be easy, but he needed to see for himself just how far the system had failed Maya, and who else it had failed along the way. Maya watched him go, her heart a mix of pride and worry. She felt exposed, her past trauma now laid bare between them. Yet for the first time, she felt a sense of hope that maybe, just maybe, things could change. As the morning light streamed through the window, she pulled out her phone. She found herself searching for the video that had been recorded by the passerby. With shaky hands, she dialed their number, hoping to secure a copy. It was evidence, something that could make Tyler's actions undeniable. The voice on the other end was warm and sympathetic. "Of course, Mrs. Harper. I'll send you the video. And if you need anything else, just let me know." Maya thanked them, a weight lifting from her shoulders. She wasn't alone in this anymore. Not only did she have Daniel's support, but now she had evidence. Tyler wouldn't be able to hide behind his badge any longer. When Daniel returned that evening, she showed him the video. His face hardened as he watched it, his hands clenched tightly. "This is all I need," he said quietly, looking up at her. "I'm taking this straight to the precinct. This won't be ignored." Maya nodded, feeling both terrified and empowered. Together, they would see this through, no matter the cost. The days of her silent suffering were over. The precinct buzzed with the usual morning chatter, officers grabbing coffee and exchanging light banter, unaware of the storm that was about to hit. Daniel walked in with Maya at his side, her head held high despite the discomfort clearly visible in her face. This wasn't a place she wanted to be, but Daniel's presence and determination fortified her resolve. As they stepped into the main room, a few heads turned. It wasn't common for the captain to walk in with his wife by his side, and as Maya moved closer to Daniel, whispers rose. Daniel didn't acknowledge them. His focus was on his mission. He spotted Tyler by his desk, laughing with a few colleagues as if he had nothing to worry about. Daniel's voice cut through the room. "Officer Roberts, a word in my office." "Now!" Tyler's head jerked up, his face darkening as he noticed Maya. For a split second, he froze, his eyes narrowing as a flicker of unease crossed his face. He quickly masked it with a smirk, though, rising with exaggerated nonchalance. "Sure, Captain. What's this about?" Tyler's voice was laced with mock curiosity as he followed Daniel, ignoring Maya entirely. Daniel led them to his office and closed the door firmly, gesturing for Maya to take a seat. Tyler stood by the door, crossing his arms, still looking confident, even amused. Daniel moved around to his desk, leaning forward with a steady, piercing gaze. "I think you know exactly what this is about," Daniel said coldly. Tyler shrugged, feigning confusion. "Actually, I don't. Care to fill me in?" Maya's hands tightened in her lap, but her voice was steady when she spoke. "Tyler, yesterday you stopped me on my walk. You used your badge to intimidate and humiliate me, and it was recorded by a witness. I've seen the video." Her gaze didn't waver. "And I'm here to make sure it's addressed." Tyler's mouth twitched, his casual demeanor slipping just slightly. He recovered with a chuckle, crossing his arms and leaning back as he eyed Daniel. "This is a joke, right? Captain, you're actually entertaining this?" Daniel's jaw tightened, his voice a low growl. There's nothing funny about abusing your power, Tyler. Especially not when it involves threatening and humiliating my wife. Tyler's eyes narrowed, his tone hardening. So, that's what this is? Some family vendetta? No, this is about integrity, Daniel replied sharply. And I'm giving you a chance to come clean before this gets taken higher. Tyler scoffed, rolling his eyes. Come on, Captain. You know how it is out there. Sometimes you have to show a little authority. It wasn't personal. Maya clenched her fists. Not personal? You didn't care that I was your captain's wife, or that you were supposed to protect people, not terrorize them. Protect people? Tyler sneered. Lady, I know exactly who I'm supposed to protect. And trust me, people like you don't make the list. The air in the room grew thick with tension. Daniel's fists were white-knuckled, his voice hard as steel. Enough! You're walking on thin ice, Tyler. I suggest you watch what you say. Tyler laughed bitterly, the smugness fading as he sensed the gravity of the situation. Oh, so this is serious, huh? You're actually going to ruin my career over one little misunderstanding? There's no misunderstanding here, Daniel said, his eyes burning. This isn't just about Maya. I've been looking into your record, and there are other complaints, ones that were buried or dismissed. Tyler's face darkened, his cocky smile vanishing. He shifted on his feet, his tone turning defensive. I've done nothing wrong. If you had anything concrete, you'd have used it by now. Maya, feeling a surge of courage, leaned forward, her voice steady. We do have something concrete, Tyler. We have a video of your actions, and there are other women who are finally willing to speak up. Your intimidation tactics won't work this time. Tyler's face blanched, but he quickly masked it with a glare. And you really think this is going to be enough? You're risking your husband's career here, lady. You really want that? Daniel's voice cut in, sharp and clear. Don't you dare threaten her, Roberts. You've made your choice, and now you're going to face the consequences. Tyler shifted his weight, eyes darting between Maya and Daniel, his mind racing. He seemed to weigh his options, then shook his head, a cold smile tugging at his lips. This precinct runs on loyalty, Captain. You go through with this, and you're going to have a hell of a time finding anyone to back you up. Daniel met his gaze without flinching. If loyalty means covering up your abuse, then I'll gladly do without it. A knock on the door interrupted them, and one of the higher-ranking officers stepped in, glancing around at the tense faces. Captain, everything all right? Daniel nodded, his voice firm. Please come in. I've called a formal meeting to address a serious incident involving Officer Roberts. Tyler's face tightened as more senior officers entered the room, filling the space with a tense energy. Maya watched, feeling her heart pound with both fear and relief. This was the confrontation she had dreaded, yet it was finally happening. As the officers settled in, Daniel straightened up. I've requested this meeting to bring attention to Officer Tyler Roberts' conduct. Yesterday, he harassed and intimidated my wife during what he claimed was a routine check. This wasn't an isolated incident, and I have reason to believe other complaints against him were suppressed. Today, we have evidence. The room was silent, officers exchanging looks of surprise and concern. Tyler's bravado was fading, his face growing paler as he realized just how serious Daniel was. One of the senior officers, a man named Lieutenant Barnes, looked at Tyler, his face hard. Is this true, Roberts? Tyler squared his shoulders, forcing a smug grin. Captain Harper's wife might have misinterpreted my intentions. I was just doing my job. Barnes turned to Daniel, his expression unreadable. And you have proof of this alleged misconduct? Maya took a breath, nodding as she produced her phone, showing the video that had been sent by the witness. The video played, capturing Tyler's words and posture, his blatant intimidation. The silence in the room was thick, every officer watching as Tyler's face contorted with a mix of fear and anger. Barnes shook his head, his tone grave. This kind of behavior has no place in our precinct, Roberts. Captain Harper, we'll need to proceed with an official review. Tyler's face hardened as he realized his bluffs had failed. He turned to Daniel, his voice a low hiss. You're making a mistake, Harper. This place won't ever look at you the same. Daniel met his gaze, unflinching. If they're willing to cover for you, then that's a problem I'm ready to face. As Tyler was led away, Maya felt a rush of relief mixed with trepidation. The battle was far from over, but for the first time, she felt seen, her voice no longer silenced by fear. And beside her, Daniel stood firm, willing to face the cost for her and for the truth. The precinct's quiet following Tyler's removal was short-lived. Rumors and side glances now filled the air. Officers who once greeted Daniel with respect now looked away, some muttering under their breath as he passed by. Maya, too, felt the sting of the whispers, as if her presence reminded them of an inconvenient truth. For Daniel, the weight of his decision became clearer each day. He had expected resistance, but not the outright hostility now directed toward him and Maya. Nonetheless, he kept his head high, pushing forward. The internal review of Tyler's conduct had begun, and he'd made it clear that he would cooperate fully. At home, Maya felt the impact as well. The calls from friends grew sparse, and at the grocery store, neighbors seemed to avert their eyes. Once supportive faces were now laced with suspicion or discomfort, and each glance felt like a question. Why couldn't you just let it go? One evening, as Maya was setting the dinner table, Daniel walked in looking worn down. He set his keys on the counter, letting out a deep sigh. She looked up, trying to hide her concern. Rough day? He nodded, running a hand through his hair. Feels like I'm swimming against a current that only gets stronger. A few of the officers I considered friends. They barely look me in the eye anymore. Maya reached out, placing a hand over his. I know this isn't easy, but you did the right thing. They're uncomfortable with the truth. Daniel clenched his jaw, his eyes heavy. It's not just discomfort, Maya. It's resentment. Barnes called me in today to warn me about the division I'm causing. Some of them are saying that I'm destroying the morale of the precinct. She felt a pang of guilt, though she knew Daniel wouldn't want her to. I'm so sorry, Daniel. You shouldn't have to bear all of this because of what happened to me. No, he said quickly, his voice softening as he looked at her. This isn't on you. If anything, I'm proud of you for not letting him intimidate you. This is the system's failure, not yours. He hesitated, then added, but I have to admit, I didn't think it would feel like losing a family. They ate in silence, each lost in thought. After dinner, as Maya cleared the dishes, she thought about the isolation they both now felt. It was as if they'd been cast out for daring to break the code of silence that seemed to bind the precinct together. Despite everything, she refused to let Tyler's actions define her or scare her back into silence. The next morning, Daniel left early to meet with Lieutenant Barnes, who had summoned him for an official conversation about the state of morale. Walking into the lieutenant's office, Daniel could feel the tension even before Barnes began. Daniel, Barnes began, his tone heavy. I think you know why we're here. Since Tyler's suspension, things haven't been the same. I'm hearing complaints from several officers about the distrust you're sowing, the way this investigation is putting everyone on edge. Daniel met his gaze without flinching. Lieutenant, Tyler abused his authority, and I had no choice but to act. This is about integrity, about our duty to protect civilians, all civilians. Barnes leaned back, sighing. I get that, but you have to understand that this is a tight-knit team. When you go after one of our own, it's hard for the others to just move on. They feel as if they're under scrutiny too. Daniel frowned. They shouldn't feel that way unless they've done something wrong. Are we not here to uphold the law? Or are we just protecting our own? Barnes shifted uncomfortably. Look, Harper, I'm not saying what Tyler did was right, but there's a way to handle things discreetly. This public investigation, the formal complaints, it's making people uneasy. Discreetly? Daniel's voice hardened. Is that what we're calling it now? Ignoring misconduct so it doesn't disrupt our comfort? That's how this happened in the first place. Barnes sighed, glancing down at his desk. Maybe you're right, Harper, but people are talking and they're not all on your side. If you keep pushing, this could turn into a problem you can't fix. Think carefully about what you're risking. When Daniel left the office, the warning echoed in his mind. It wasn't just about Tyler anymore. The entire culture of the precinct was built on unspoken rules, and he was challenging them at the cost of his own standing. But he couldn't ignore the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it was. Later that night, as he sat with Maya, she noticed the weight in his expression and touched his arm gently. "Daniel, I don't want to see you go through this alone. You're fighting this for me, for us, but let me be by your side," he sighed, looking at her with a mix of pride and worry. "I just don't want you exposed to the worst of this, Maya. You've already been through enough. I know, but what they're doing affects us both. I don't want you facing it without me," she said softly. "We're stronger together." The following day, Maya took a step further. She contacted a local community group that supported victims of abuse and harassment. To her surprise, when she explained her story, several women in the group admitted they'd had similar experiences. Run-ins with officers who overstepped their authority, sometimes subtly, sometimes blatantly. Inspired, Maya decided to speak out, organizing a meeting where people in the community could come forward with their stories. She knew the risks, the backlash she and Daniel might face, but the thought of staying silent was no longer an option. Her story wasn't just about Tyler anymore. It was about a pattern of behavior that the community had accepted for too long. When Daniel heard about the meeting, he felt a pang of worry, but also pride. He knew it would only make things harder at the precinct, but he was willing to endure it for her and for the change they both believed in. The night of the meeting, the community center filled with faces both familiar and new. Maya took a deep breath before stepping to the front, her hands slightly trembling, but her voice steady. "Thank you all for coming tonight," she began, scanning the room. "This isn't easy to talk about, but it's necessary. I'm here because I believe our community deserves better. Last week, I was intimidated and harassed by a police officer who abused his authority. And I know I'm not alone. Tonight, I want us to speak openly about our experiences, to share and support each other." As the night wore on, one by one, people shared their stories, some similar, some different, but all with a common thread of fear and helplessness. Daniel sat quietly at the back, listening, feeling the weight of their voices adding urgency to his mission. This wasn't just a personal fight anymore. It was a fight for every person in that room. By the end of the night, Maya felt exhausted but fulfilled, surrounded by people who shared her pain and resilience. As she and Daniel walked home together in the cool night air, she squeezed his hand, feeling the strength in his grip. "Thank you for standing with me, Daniel," she said softly. He looked at her, pride and determination in his eyes. "Thank you for giving me the courage to do what's right. Whatever comes next, we face it together." The following days saw a ripple effect throughout the community. News of Maya's meeting spread quickly, stirring conversations among neighbors, friends, and even local businesses. More people came forward, emboldened by Maya's story, and soon the community center was holding weekly gatherings focused on exposing abuses of power and sharing resources for those who needed help. Daniel watched these changes unfold with a mix of pride and quiet worry. The precinct had become a hostile place for him, but he didn't regret his decision. He could see the strength it gave Maya and knew that their sacrifice was fueling something larger than themselves. He'd spent his career upholding the law, but now, for the first time, he was part of something transformative. One afternoon, Lieutenant Barnes called Daniel into his office. Daniel knew that this conversation would be decisive. Either he would be welcomed back with a truce or forced to walk away from everything he'd built. "Harper, sit down," Barnes said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. He sighed, running a hand over his face before meeting Daniel's gaze. "This isn't easy for any of us, you know that." Daniel nodded, feeling the weight of what he was about to say. "It's been hard, yes, but we can't just sweep this under the rug, Barnes. You've seen the changes in the community. People are paying attention." Barnes shifted uncomfortably. "Yes, but this attention isn't exactly positive for the department. Look, I'm not here to punish you for what you believe, Harper. I respect your commitment to justice. But you're making it hard for us to function as a team. Then maybe it's the team that needs to change," Daniel replied. "If this precinct can't handle accountability, if we can't admit when we've made mistakes, then we're not doing our jobs." Barnes' face softened, and he leaned back with a sigh. "I've seen the impact of your wife's work, the voices she's brought forward. It's making me look at this job differently. I want you to know that. But you need to be careful, Harper. There's a lot of resistance here, and it's not just coming from inside these walls. Daniel's gaze held firm. I understand, but this is about integrity, and it's bigger than you or me. Barnes studied him for a moment before giving a small nod. All right, you're a good cop, Harper, and you're needed here. Just know you're on thin ice. With that, Daniel left the office, feeling a bittersweet relief. He was still a part of the precinct, but the walls of loyalty and silence were cracking, and he knew the shift he and Maya had catalyzed was spreading. That evening, Maya hosted another community meeting, this time inviting Daniel to speak. As they took their places in front of a larger crowd than ever before, Daniel felt a wave of gratitude wash over him. People looked at Maya with admiration, her quiet resilience lighting a fire in them that he knew couldn't be extinguished. He cleared his throat, addressing the room. I'm here not just as a police officer, but as a member of this community. My wife, Maya, showed me that accountability isn't just a word. It's an action we have to take every day, regardless of how difficult it is. I want to make something clear. Abuses of power have no place in our precinct, and I'll do everything I can to make sure they're addressed, no matter how long it takes. A murmur of agreement passed through the crowd, and Maya took his hand, squeezing it gently. We all deserve respect and safety, she added. I'm proud of what we're building here, of the way we're standing together. As the meeting concluded, they lingered, speaking with people who thanked them, shared stories, and asked questions. Each interaction reinforced their resolve. The community was no longer silent. Their stories and voices wove a strong fabric of solidarity, one that would hold firm against those who wished to maintain the status quo. Back at home, as they finally settled in, Maya looked at Daniel, her expression thoughtful. This isn't just about Tyler anymore, is it? Daniel shook his head, a smile tugging at his lips. No, it's about changing the way we see each other, the way we respond when we see something wrong. And it's because of you, Maya. You were brave enough to speak up, and now look how many people are following. She smiled back, leaning her head on his shoulder. I couldn't have done it without you by my side. The next day, Daniel received news that Tyler had resigned. The internal review had unveiled a trail of complaints and conduct violations that made his position untenable. His departure was met with mixed reactions. Some officers were relieved, while others still whispered about loyalty and betrayal. Daniel remained steadfast, knowing that he'd done what was right, not what was easy. In the months that followed, changes began to take root. The precinct implemented new policies, including more stringent guidelines on officer conduct and a confidential complaint system, allowing community members to report grievances without fear of backlash. Daniel had pushed for these reforms, supported by both his rank and the collective voices of those who had been silenced for too long. Maya's advocacy continued to grow. She formed a support network, connecting victims of abuse with resources and legal support, offering them a path to healing. Her own story became a beacon for others, showing that standing up against injustice was worth the cost, that change was possible. One evening, as they walked through their neighborhood, this time without fear, Daniel looked at Maya, his voice soft. I don't think I ever truly understood the depth of your strength until now. She smiled, her eyes warm with gratitude. And I never realized just how much you'd sacrifice for what's right. Together, we've made something real, something lasting. Their journey had tested them in ways they